Hi everybody. It is Saturday afternoon and I wanted to do a live because I feel like we've had some questions that have been coming up over and over again between my different Facebook groups, and I'm doing two groups at the same time. So if you see me looking back and forth, I have two different devices going at the same time, so that's what I'm doing. But I wanted to talk with you guys about socialization and also about the developmental periods that dogs go through, because I'm seeing these questions over and over again, and I think that we could really shed some light on this stuff for everybody. So the first thing is that puppies go through developmental periods, and there's a few key ones. So there is 0 to 6 months of age where they are puppies, so that's basically puppyhood. 6 months old to about 2 years old is adulthood, is adolescence for dogs, and then over the age of 2 is adulthood. Now those are averages. Some dogs start adolescence sooner, some dogs start it later. Certain breeds have different tendencies. So for example, if you have a retriever, they tend to not hit adulthood until like the age of 3 or 4 as opposed to the age of 2. So I apologize for you in advance. If you do have a retriever that's a teenager, you'll deal with it a little bit longer than other breeds. But within those time frames, there's some key things that happen. So there's 2 fear periods that dogs go through, and they're developmental fear periods. And what that means is that something that they never had a problem with before, all of a sudden they are wary of or barking at or unsure of. So some examples could be, you put a new flag in the yard, like a decoration, and your dog was fine with it before, and now all of a sudden they're like, what was that? What is that new thing? I don't know what it is, and they may back away from it or bark at it. Another example is people. So your dog could have been very fine with all different types of people, and then all of a sudden now they are wary of, like, for instance, men with beards, or if somebody has a hat on. We're heading into winter now, so big bulky winter clothes, they can be nervous of that, where before they never had a problem with it. So the actual age of those fear periods, the first one is when they're puppies, and it's usually between like 8 and 12 weeks of age, and that's the first fear period. And then the next fear period is during adolescence, and it can start, so I typically see it for most dogs between like 9 months of age and 12 to 14 months of age. The experts say it can actually happen anytime between 6 months of age and 14 months of age. So that's where they hit that second period, and that's where people usually have the most issue. That's where your dog, all of a sudden you take them for a walk and they've always been fine, but now they are afraid of the garbage cans that people put out on a certain day, where they never had a problem with the garbage cans before. Or now they're barking at other dogs when they see them on the leash, and they never did that before. So that's usually the one that I hear the most about, is that second fear period. So all of that being said, there's also an issue with socialization. So the official definition of socialization, which I wish that people in the professionals in my industry would do a better job of explaining this to people, but the official definition is that your dog knows how to interact appropriately in 3 different categories. Okay, so it's the first category is with people they've never met before. The second category is with dogs they've never met before. And the third category is in places they've never been before. So those are the 3 categories. Now, what's important for you to know about that is that your dog doesn't come automatically built in with these things. They need to learn through experience that people are fun, new people are okay, that new dogs are okay, or going new places is not scary. So that's what they're doing when you're socializing them, is you're building a library of experiences, hopefully positive experiences, in each of those categories. And your dog could be fine in all 3 categories, or you could have a dog that's fine in 1 category and horrible in 2, or fine in 2 categories and horrible in 1. But that's how it works, and that's what you're doing when you're socializing your dog. So when somebody is going to, and I see this all the time, somebody gets a rescue dog, they take it to the vet will say, oh, well, you really need to socialize this dog. And then the mistake that people make is they think that means going to the dog park and letting them off leash. I know way too many dogs in my career that have been attacked in that situation simply because that's exactly what somebody did, was they went to the dog park and let their dog off leash to socialize them, and then you have a dog fight that ensues because that dog was not social with other dogs. So what I always tell my clients is that socialization, especially coming as it relates to new dogs, is a lifestyle choice for you. So what that means is that if it's important for you, for your dog to be friendly with new dogs they've never met before, you have to decide that as early as possible. So if you get a puppy, you need to start right away. If you get a rescue dog and you're not sure where they're at, you need to start right away. If you get an older dog and you find out that they're not really keen, it may be too late. But the bottom line is, if your dog is young enough and it's important for you that they get along with family members' dogs at holidays, or can play on the beach when you take them on vacation, or you want to be able to go to the local dog park, these are things that you have to decide. And if you decide that that's important to you in your lifestyle, then you need to socialize your dog early and often. Okay, so what does that mean? It means that they need to be regularly meeting new dogs they've never met before. Now, if they are meeting new dogs, it needs to be a positive experience. Okay, so that's important. And it needs to be something that is controlled. So like dog parks are not the best avenue for that, especially if you have a younger dog, because it's not as controlled. You can't control who's there or whether or not that dog is actually social, or the dog that I just used the example of where they're actually just came from the vet and they just got the dog and they have no idea if they're friendly or not, and they let them off leash at the dog park. So that's why dog parks are not the best avenue for that. I always recommend that if you can find a reputable dog daycare in your area, that's the best avenue for that, because they should be regularly meeting new dogs at the daycare. And you want to ask them that as well. Is it the same pack every single time you bring them, or is it different dogs? Are they meeting new dogs? And the daycare will also screen for vaccinations, and they have some sort of rules. So it's supervised, and there's some sort of rules. In my opinion, the more rules, the better. So I always recommend that you ask those questions of the daycare. Do you have rules for the dogs? If the answer is no, or if they say they don't correct the dogs at all when they're playing, then I would look for another daycare, because free-for-alls are not going to help you. And that's what I call daycares there's no rules. The dogs just play at whatever energy level they want to play at. They get hyper, they get overstimulated. It's way too much. And it affects all the dogs, even the ones that aren't playing at that high energy level. So you should ask those types of questions. And that's a very good avenue for socializing your dog. Now, I've seen some dogs that are really good at daycare, but not good when mom or dad have them on the leash. So that's another thing that you have to be aware of, is that just because your dog goes to daycare doesn't mean they're going to be okay with another dog when you have the leash. So that's a separate topic that we can deal with on another day. But the importance of socialization is that you choose that if you want your dog to be friendly with other dogs, you have to make that choice, and then you have to go out of your way to make sure that they're regularly meeting new dogs they've never met before. So that means that if your dog plays all the time with the neighbor, their dog, or they play all the time with your sister or brother's dog, or your parents have a dog that your dog plays with all the time, that doesn't count anymore. That dog no longer counts for socialization, because they already know that dog. So you could have a dog that is totally fine with your neighbor's dog and your family members' dogs their whole life, but be completely aggressive towards other dogs that they've never met before. So that's why it doesn't count anymore. So they could have regular play dates with dogs that they do know, but they need to be regularly meeting new dogs that they've never met in order for them to be social with other dogs. Okay? Now, that being said, a lot of times what people do, the mistakes I see, is that they have a puppy, they take them to puppy class, the dog does great in puppy class, loves other dogs, they play with the neighbor dog, the family member's dog, and they're fine. And then all of a sudden, when they're in that second fear period between the ages of like 8 months and 14 months, is where all of a sudden now they're barking and lunging at other dogs when they see them. and you don't know why, like what's going on here. So that typically means that they are, there's something about that dog that they are unsure of. Okay, so when they're building that library of experiences, what they're actually doing when it comes to dogs and people is they're learning to read body language that looks different than them and different play styles. So if you have, for instance, a lab, a retriever, they are what we call in the daycare industry, they're technically called body slammers, okay? That's their play style. You have a dog like that that wants to play with like a German Shepherd. German Shepherds are herding dogs. Herding dogs want to chase. When herding dogs chase, it's generally not tackle at the end. Labs are all about the tackle at the end. They don't even care if there's chase in between. It's just got to be the tackle. So those two types of play styles have to learn how to play with each other. So they're learning play styles, they're learning body language differences. So if you have hi Chelsea, if you have a dog, like if you think about the difference in look between a Great Dane, a English Bulldog, and then a Shih Tzu. Okay, so 3 totally different dogs, different tails, different ears, different body carriage, different size, different hair. Okay, so your dog needs to learn how to read the body language of dogs that don't look like them or their litter mates when they were puppies. That's what they got used to. That's why a lot of times what you'll see is golden retrievers that love to play with other golden retrievers. Or if you have a dog that, shepherds love to play with other shepherds, or labs love to play with other labs. Golden doodles love to play with other golden doodles. It's because they have similar play styles and because they're used to reading the body language of dogs that look like that from their puppyhood. So they are drawn to that and they will seek that out more. So when you are doing this with your dog, that's what they're doing, is learning how to read that body language that they would normally not have understood if you didn't expose them to that. Does that make sense? So, hi Cindy. So what you want to do is you want to make sure that they're constantly meeting those new dogs and different shapes and sizes and play styles, and they're building a very thorough library of experiences. So then when they see that strange dog and you're out walking and they look at that dog that they've never seen before and they're trying to make a quick assessment, is this dog a threat to me or not? They have a library of experiences to draw upon that says, hey, wait a minute, I've played with a dog that looks like that before. I recognize that tail carriage and those ears, and that means that they're friendly when they're looking at me like that. So I'm okay with that. Versus if they're not sure, or if they feel like the dog is sending them any sort of vibe that is not safe, okay, that's their instinct, is this situation that I'm in right now safe for me or for my human? And if they're not sure, instinct says if you're not sure, then you better handle it like it's a threat, just in case, because it's better safe than sorry, right? So that's what they are doing when they see that other dog at a distance and they're trying to make that judgment call. And a lot of times if that other dog is barking and carrying on at them, that may put them on edge too, because they're like, well, wait a minute, is this safe or not? This dog is acting aggressively towards me. Now, the more your dog is exposed to other dogs, the more it's not a novelty when they see those other dogs. And I've seen a lot of puppies, like puppies between 6 months old and like a year and a half old, who are super excited. They want to play with the other dogs, and they're so excited, and they don't get an outlet for it regularly. So they're actually like on the end of the leash, and they're like straining, and some of them do this screaming noise or barking noise because they're so overexcited. And the other dog is looking at them like, I don't know if I want to come over there. That doesn't look very safe. So, or the other owner sees that and won't let their dog come over. And it's also not a great idea if your dog is that overstimulated to allow them to do an interaction at that point. So, but that's the dog really craving that interaction and not getting it. So when you give them regular interactions through daycare or play dates or getting them to meet new dogs, then it becomes not such a big deal anymore when they see that other dog, because, oh, they see dogs all the time. So then you get the dog that kind of like just ignores the other dogs when they walk by, or they look and they're like, hey, how are you? And then they keep going. So that's what you really want, is the goal of socializing them is so that they understand that. Now, as dog gets older, when it comes to other dogs, what we see at my daycare is that as the dog gets older, they have a lot less tolerance for what I'll call the young punks. Okay, that's what I call teenagers in the dog daycare. And what they are doing is they basically don't want to be bothered. Now, I don't know about you, but I know at my age currently, hanging out with a group of 14-year-old girls is not exactly what I would call fun at this age. I would like to avoid that probably at all costs. I think maybe an ice pick in the eardrum would be more fun than the screaming of 14-year-old girls. So I think that we as family, as humans, get less tolerant of those young punks, as just like dogs do. So you may find that as your dog gets older, they don't want to be around the younger dogs or the super high energy dogs. And that's okay. You need to respect that. And most daycares should respect that as well. We have a lot of senior dogs that come to daycare, and we make sure that they're not being bugged. And they can hang out with their friends that they have and not be tortured by puppies jumping on their heads or adolescents trying to force them into play or bullying them into play. So that's something you also want to keep in mind, is that even if your dog is really social when they're younger, as they get older, sometimes they just don't want to be around that high energy anymore. So you need to respect that. Now, as it relates to people, socializing in the people category, that's something that's extremely important, because no matter what your lifestyle, okay, dogs are one thing. You make that choice. If you want your dog to be social with other dogs, that's a choice you make. That's something you work at if that's important to you, but it's not necessary. But people, on the other hand, your dog is going to have to deal with people their whole life. So you need to make sure that they're social with people. And that means that they're learning to read the body language of people that look different than their immediate family. So if you have people with, and the things that dogs will sometimes relate to is, or react to is taller people. They tend to be more reactive to men than women, simply because men have a more dominant body language than women do. They can be reactive to anything that hides facial features. Okay, so hats, hoods, dark, big sunglasses, anything like that can hide the dog's ability to read the facial features of the person. They can react to that because then they're not getting a good read on whether or not this person intends harm to them or their you when you're with them, their pack, their family members. So that's what they're doing with people. Facial hair, for men with beards and things like that, that's something that not all dogs understand. I know Liam, my therapy dog, is absolutely fascinated by beards. My husband doesn't wear a beard. No one we really know in our immediate family has beards. And he's very intrigued by it when he sees them. He wants to get up there and sniff it and check it all out. But that's not a negative reaction, because he's super social. So, but if a dog isn't used to seeing a beard, it could be viewed as hiding facial expressions or facial features. So sometimes they'll be reactive to that. They will also react to anything that hides your body orientation. So intention is something that is read in the whole picture of your body language. So if you think about it, hi David, if you think about it like if somebody was walking down the street, okay, let's say it's dark and you're walking down the street and you're by yourself, and then you see somebody walking on the street as well, and you're not sure of that person's intention, okay, you're looking at their body language and how they're moving towards you. Are they like moving slowly and almost like a stalking motion? Are they rushing towards you? Are they even looking at you or just totally ignoring you? These are all things that go into reading body language, and that's what dogs do for us as well as humans. They're very, very good at it, at reading us, probably better in most cases than we are. But that's what they're doing when they're socializing with people, is gauging, is this person a threat to me or to my owner, and do I have enough information that I've gathered through my socialization to make that decision? Do I understand that this person is not a threat, or am I unsure, at which point instinct says maybe I better handle it like a threat? So with people, the best thing to do is to make sure that they're meeting as many people as possible. A really good way to do that is, if your dog is food motivated, have people give them treats. because that's usually for a dog that likes food, that's a positive experience. So that helps them to feel better about the strangers when strangers typically give them treats. If your dog is nervous about approaching a stranger, or if your dog is tends to be reactive to people, then what you don't want to do is allow them to rush up to somebody and then they're right in front of them, because what dogs do is they rush up to somebody. Curiosity causes that. They want to check them out right away. They rush up to them. And then once they're there, they go, oh crap, now I'm way too close and I'm uncomfortable. And what do? The dogs, they don't go, oh, well, let me just back away. They go, you're too close, get away from me. And that's when they will air snap or bark at the individual, even though they put themselves there. So if your dog does any of that stuff, then what you want to do is ask the stranger to toss them the treat, not hand them the treat. Because handing them the treat, most humans, if they put their hand out with a treat in it and the dog comes over and takes the treat, what is the very next thing they're going to do? Try and pet the dog, right? They're going to try and flip their hand over and touch them. And if your dog is nervous, they don't want to be touched by that stranger. So tossing the treat helps that. So that's why you would ask the person, you give them the treat from you and you say, could you please toss it on the ground? And you have to be very specific with instructions because people aren't listening. They typically are just staring at your dog. So you want to ask them to toss the treat so that they are able to get the treat off the ground, have that positive experience with that stranger without actually having to be touched by them or interact with them. So that's the people part of it. And the places part of it, so we went through dogs, we went through people, and now the places part of it, of socialization, is where you want to make sure that your dog is comfortable in new environments. Okay, so I've seen dogs who come to my daycare who are at home or they're at daycare and they don't really go anywhere else. And then the owner wants to take them out. We do field trips with our clients where we go to restaurants or we'll go on hikes, and the dog is a nervous wreck because they're not used to going new places. So you need to expose them to new places. Another thing that happens regularly is I see dogs that were raised in the country, and then the owners decide, especially young couples, they move, their jobs change, they move into a more urban environment or a citier environment, and the dog is having a mental breakdown because they have no idea what to do with the noises and the smells and the changes. Where's the grass? Where's the crickets at night? They just don't get it. So if you feel like your lifestyle might dictate it, then you want to expose them to things like that. So the difference between country to suburban to urban areas, you should expose your dog to all of those things. You should expose them to different surfaces. So sand, rocks, grass, pavement, blacktop. All of these things are different surfaces that they may need to be exposed to. I see it in the Philadelphia area where I live, a lot of people go to the beach. We go to the Jersey Shore, the Delaware Shore in the summers. And when you're down there with your dogs, there's no grass, okay? There's no grass for your dog to go to the bathroom on. If there is, it's a little patch in front of someone's house and they have like 8 signs up that say, don't let your dog poop here. So the one little patch of grass your dog's not allowed to use. So what you want to do is get your dog used to going to the bathroom on different surfaces, okay? So there's sand and rocks down there, not as much grass. Or if you have to stop, you want to travel with your dog and you have to stop on the side of the road, and now you're in the side of the road with all the tall grass and the garbage and everything. That's where you want to get them used to that as well. So these are all situational things. If you take your dogs inside stores, take your dogs outdoor to dine at restaurants, these are all situational things that you need to expose your dog to if it's important to you now, or if you think in the lifespan of your dog, which most people, if you just say in the next 10 years, how much is your life going to change? And if you're not sure the answer to that question, look back and say, how much has your life changed in the past 10 years? Okay, and you need to then go ahead and expose your dog to these things so that they are socialized and that they then don't have, complete mental breakdowns when life changes. Okay, the more regimented they are, the harder it is to deal with change, just like us people. And the more you expose them to new and different things, the easier it is for them then to adapt if your life does change. So socialization is a key part of that. So Hopefully this helped you a little bit. I feel like we're getting a lot of questions with dogs that have issues between the ages of like a year and 2 years of age, where before they were fine with something and now they're not. And that is usually a combination of what we talked about in the beginning, the developmental period for the dogs. And it's also a combination of socialization. So that hopefully gives you some answers and some ideas of what to do. And if you guys have any questions at all on any of this stuff, as always, please reach out and I'm happy to answer them. Thank you guys. Have a great weekend.